Is it possible to fully give love to others if you don't know how to fully love yourself?
That's why Jesus said that, to love your neighbor as you love yourself.
But if you don't love yourself,
you're not going to love your neighbor.
Right.
Yeah. And because we reflect on others what we really feel about ourselves. And if you hate yourself, you will treat other people with disdain. But when you love yourself, and there's a difference between loving yourself and being in love with yourself. And I think the difference is significant and subtle. A narcissist is in love with themselves.
Right.
But a healthy human being loves themselves. They know they have value. They know they have worth. And they know that they have the right to be treated with respect and value. And when you know that about yourself, then you know that about every other human being. What happens sometimes, and even in my shift, I talk about how you find who you are. And I've traveled to maybe 70 countries around the world and have met people across this entire planet. And everywhere I go, I find really kind people. I find people who want to do good in the world. I find trustworthy people. But I've talked to people and they go, oh yeah, and I've traveled the world and you can't trust anyone. Everyone's out for themselves. Everyone's greedy. And I realized we're both traveling the same world, but we're not meeting the same people because you find who you are.
Wow. Yeah. Or the frequency you're at.
Yeah. And so I think the dynamic here is that when you love yourself, you actually value loving others. When you do not love yourself, you do not value loving others. And so it does begin here because you need to realize that your self-worth is a reflection of everyone else's self-worth.
And really? Explain that. Say that again, and then what does that mean?
When I was in college at Chapel Hill, I was in the psychology department, and we took all these assessments. And there was this one question that I thought was really interesting. I never forgotten. Of all the assessments I've ever taken, it said, given the right circumstances, any person would steal. And here was my dilemma. I was now a new person of faith, and I was told, everyone's sinful. So I should say yes, everyone would steal, given the right circumstances. But something inside of me couldn't say yes. And so now I was dealing with this either theological truth or this human truth. And I can't explain the human truth. It was just what I felt inside of me. And so I answered no, and this is the way I framed it in my mind. Given the right circumstances, every person would steal. No, in the right circumstances, the person wouldn't have to steal. It's only in the wrong circumstances that a person would steal. And this is, the reason I point this out is because I believe anyone can change because I've changed. I mean, I watch a lot of shows that say people don't change. And you've probably had people on your show who believe people don't change. I know people can change. And the reason I know people can change is because I've changed. And if I can change, anyone can change. See, what you conclude about yourself is what you'll project on other people.
Right.
And so if you're not worthy of love, no one's worthy of love. If you're not worthy of forgiveness, no one is worthy of forgiveness. In fact, ironically, if you won't forgive yourself, you will never forgive anyone else.
Wow.
But when you forgive yourself, you are now living in this state of grace. And so when you forgive yourself, now you have the capacity to forgive other people. And so ironically, one of the things for me is, I turned 65, in this August, and I live in a constant state of grace because I don't expect myself to be perfect.
Right.
I've lived long enough now to go, oh, I'm still dysfunctional. I'm borderline neurotic. And,
sure.
and Lewis, even on a serious level, I still struggle with something that would be described like night terrors.
Night terrors.
But they're night terrors at a level that I don't even know how to express to you. Like
nightmares?
No, I have this psychological or neurological condition where I'm awake and asleep at the same time all the time.
Wow.
And I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm in my nightmares, but I'm wide awake.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, I had this one nightmare where I've died like 1,000 times.
Holy cow.
And twice in Copenhagen, I fell asleep for like 20 minutes And I was in this nightmare, calling my son, telling him, come, I'm dying. I want to say goodbye. I mean, my family has watched this for years. My wife has watched me walking through the house in this other state, fighting off death, trying to say goodbye to her and my
Holy
family.
cow.
And this happened to me again last week. And so it's not like something in my past. This is something I've lived with since probably I was 5 years old.
Wow.
And I can't even fully express the psychological trauma of having died 1,000 times.
Oh,
and
that's intense.
And carrying it and wanting, and my poor kids, my son called me at 4:30 in the morning, and I was calling him to say goodbye.
Wow.
And so I understand, when I'm talking about all these things, I understand the reality of trauma. I understand what it's like to have like deep wounds and scars in your soul. My joy in life isn't traumaless. My love for people and my love for life and my sense of wholeness is not separated from the fact that I have like deep scars and deep wounds inside of me. But those scars, even those nightmares, don't define me. I'm defined by something much larger than that. And I think it's what allows me to connect to people. So when you know that you have deep scars, you understand other people have deep scars. And you're able to resonate with that, and you're able to empathize with it, and you lack judgment over people's lives.
Right.
And that's why I don't have room for condemnation. Like, I don't have room to judge people, because there's so much you could judge me for. And I know that we're all sort of in transition, and we're on the journey toward our wholeness, even while we have found like tremendous wholeness. And when you understand that about yourself, you now understand that about everyone else. And it just makes you so much more empathetic. Like, I just never have bitterness. It's weird. I don't have resentment over anyone. And in fact, in psychologically, if you've like hurt me really badly, I almost forget that it ever happened.
Really?
Someone sent me an email this past week apologizing for something they did like 10 years ago.
And you forgot about it?
I couldn't remember what they did.
Really?
At all. And they were like so deeply like sorrowful. And you know what I thought?
Were you always that way?
Always.
I mean, you've always been this kind of forgiving and forgetful of the
I think
pain.
it's the only way I could deal with deep level of pain.
Interesting.
Because I realized that bitterness would corrupt me, would ruin me, would shape me in a way I didn't want to become. And my only response to that person is, I'm just so sad you've carried this for 10 years.
Wow.
Because if you've carried this for 10 years and now you're asking for forgiveness, you could have been free of this 10 years ago.
Wow.
I had this...
and it's almost impossible to be at the highest level frequency when you're holding on to that type of frustration or resentment.
When you're holding on to unforgiveness, you cannot move to your highest frequency.
Wow.
When you're holding on to bitterness or jealousy or anger, you're always going to move toward those lower frequencies. And you can see that in people. Even people that you like and enjoy, you can see that their negative frequency is their more natural frequency. They have to fight for that positive frequency. And what they don't realize is that your frequency is coming from your essence. And if you want to express yourself from your most powerful and positive frequencies, you have to forgive. You have to let go of bitterness. You have to let go of things like envy and jealousy.
Right.
And really fill yourself with hope and love, with joy, with compassion, kindness.